Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions, and thank you again so much for our time together. We're greatly looking forward to seeing you in the services tonight. Please forgive this late posting, but as all of you have known, traffic this week has been fascinating. All right, I think I've spent 4 hours in the car already this morning. Now, tonight in the service, I'm going to continue to teach you on keeping your heart from turning away from the living God. Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to teach you about Paul as a spiritual father strengthening the hearts of the believers. Now, with that in mind, I want you to come back to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, beginning with verse 19. Paul says, "Have you been thinking all along that we have been defending ourselves to you? We have been speaking in the sight of God as those in Christ, and everything we do, dear friends, is for your strengthening." As you read through 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Paul faces the incredible disrespect of these people toward him as their spiritual father. In fact, earlier here in chapter 12, beginning with verse 11, Paul says, "I have made a fool of myself, but you drove me to it. I ought to have been commended by you, for I am not in the least inferior to the super apostles, even though I am nothing. The marks of an apostle, signs, wonders, and miracles were done among you with great perseverance. How were you inferior to the other churches, except I was never a burden to you?" Forgive me this wrong. He said, the only difference between you and the other churches, I never took any money from you. I never accepted any support from you. In fact, those poor churches in Macedonia supported me while I ministered to you, these rich people of Corinth. Now, Paul says, listen, all this stuff I've done, all this stuff I've been correcting you about with your attitudes toward leadership and your attitudes toward these super apostles and your attitudes about supporting the ministry, he said, I have not been defending myself. I'm trying to strengthen you. He said, there's no personal agenda in my speaking. There's no personal problem in what I'm saying. He said, I do this in the sight of God as those in Christ. And everything we do, dear friends, is for your strengthening. Now, at some point as a Christian, you're going to have to realize your attitude toward your pastor affects your spiritual life. Let me say that again. Your attitude toward your pastor affects your spiritual life. It affects whether you listen to them. It affects whether you do what they teach you. It affects you. Now, you have to understand, I know there are pastors who do have agendas, please. And I know there are pastors who are rough on people and say things just to defend themselves. I agree. All of us as pastors have made those mistakes at some point or another in our lifetime. But Paul says, I didn't make that mistake. Paul said, everything I've said, everything I've done has not been to defend myself. It has been to make you stronger. Your attitude toward spiritual leadership determines strength and weakness in your life, spiritually speaking. I want to challenge you today. Maybe don't pay so much attention to the televangelists and to the people who you don't know. And forgive me, don't know you and don't really care about you unless you send them an offering. Why don't you start paying attention to your local pastor? Why don't you start paying attention to the pastor who visits you in your home and loves you and cares about you and really, really wants to make sure you make it to heaven?